Okay, so welcome and a very good morning. My voice is still a little bit rough. I'm sorry for this. My name is Svenja. I will chair the session. You are in the ICED talk 5 on strategic change, curriculum enhancement and faculty development. And we have 3 presentations announced, but we are missing the third speaker yet. So maybe she will arrive, but maybe we will only have 2 presentations. ICED talks have been done differently the last days. We decided that we will, the presenters will stick to the 10 minutes, and we will have the 2 presentations after each other, or 3 maybe, hopefully. And then we will have still time for Q&A afterwards. So everybody who wants to stay for Q&A is very welcome to do so. Without further ado, I'm very happy to welcome Eva and Lena from the US and from Austria, and you will do your presentation now. We are looking very much forward.
Turn it on. There you are. Perfect. Good morning, everyone. As was already said, my name is Lena Lockett. I'm an educational developer at George Mason University, which is right outside of DC in the US.
Hello, I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. You probably all know those. My name is Eva. I currently work as an educational developer at the University of Vienna in Austria. And today we want to share a format that we have developed together with you and that we call the Traveling Workshop. Here is our short premise.
What if the most powerful educational development offering your institution hosted wasn't organized internally, but instead traveled? Imagine knowledge moving across boundaries without moving people.
Across our universities, we see the same patterns. As educational developers, we are often siloed, access to expertise is uneven, and great practices very often just remain local. Meanwhile, our calendars are full and our travel budgets are always very limited.
Years ago, we were critical friends to each other, working as doctoral students at the same institution. Maybe you'll see us. There we are. Here you can see us running an in-person workshop at Rutgers University, and this ended up becoming the foundation for everything that followed. As time went on, we both got jobs at teaching centers, but they were oceans apart, and yet we still shared similar questions.
So we stayed in contact and we continued to collaborate, building on some of the work we had started as graduate students. We had originally come together to tackle teaching questions from different perspectives. So I'm from the humanities and Lena is from STEM. Subsequently, we came up with the idea to mirror our own meaningful boundary crossing exchanges on a bigger scale. So we built a format that does exactly that.
It's low threshold and portable across contexts and designed to spark co-creation. We call it a traveling workshop. Today we'll show you how it works, why it promotes epistemic agency, our capacity to shape action and context, and how you can adapt it to your own setting. Our simple goal?
We want you to try the format. Start with a question that is teaching related that you're interested in and find a colleague that might share this interest. That's the foundation of the traveling workshop. But what do you do after you have this initial idea?
You rethink your questions. We stopped asking, how do we deliver our content, and started asking, how do we reach different audiences and activate them? Content obviously still matters, but agency changes what happens afterwards. And we didn't want to keep what we had learned and what had helped our colleagues to ourselves.
So in practice, we built the traveling workshops in 3 steps. So first, we were searching for institutions that were interested in hosting us in our workshop. Second, we were structuring the workshop in a way that participants would have key takeaways. So what is the additional value if they join your session? And then finally, and probably most importantly, we were focusing on giving opportunity for exchange for the participants, meaning that even if the participants didn't know each other and were meeting each other for the first time, they got talking.
So, for us, we started with a familiar challenge, which was how do you engage non-major students? So for those outside of the US context, that basically means that in liberal arts education, you have students who have to take a certain set of classes, it's not part of their major, and so because of that, a lot of times they don't want to be there. So these mandatory classes are often taught by doctoral students and adjunct faculty, which also happen to be the same population of people who really aren't as often included in those educational development opportunities.
That's the reason why we wanted to make sure that our traveling workshop is particularly easily accessible. Our virtual roadshow travels differently. It's the hosts that travel virtually, the local problems stay the same, and the people who participate are the co-creators. So the next step is theirs and not ours.
But that brings us to the idea about the implementation. So basically, if you can send a calendar invite, you can do this. Here are the phases we used and the templates you can also use if you want to try this for yourself.
We built a 90-minute workshop to help general education faculty and focused on 2 main activities. We as hosts also collected some data, so we collected brief surveys and some artifacts, using the format as a basis for a small Scholarship of Academic Development project. In your context, you can use this format and adapt it. You can go shorter, you can go longer, you can interweave activities that fit your own goals and your own constraints.
So we'll give you some more specifics about our own context. So, like I said, we're thinking about those non-major students. So we start our workshop with a Padlet activity. We basically have the faculty who participate think about 5 different themes that we pre-selected that we thought were pretty important for those students. So for us, those topics were relevance, academic backgrounds of students, terminology, motivation, and engagement. Faculty are given time to ask questions, and then they're also given time to respond to the questions of their peers, and we also provide feedback as well. After they've made their additions to the Padlet, then we engage in a larger full group discussion so people can expand their ideas and ask follow-up questions. And so I'm going to put up a Padlet example from the University of Pittsburgh. And so what you can see here is that there are a lot of resources. And so this remains available, presumably indefinitely, for faculty to be able to go back and reference later.
After the Padlet discussion, we spent time on an activity that was focusing on connecting the faculty joining us. So the focus was rather simple. It was connect people and connect ideas. So we put the participants into pairs and groups of 3 in breakout rooms, and we wanted them to discuss the following. Imagine you teach a group of students who are mostly from your colleague's discipline. Discuss specifics of the field you could use engaging with the students. And if time permitted, you could also start to rethink an activity that you were already implementing, now having thought about engagement and how you can engage now the colleagues, students in said activity. Overall, all of our participants really got talking and developed new ideas.
But more than that, imagine you're a participant from the STEM discipline, like me. Be sure you're going to get matched with someone probably from the humanities, like Eva. We want you to look outside of your disciplines, outside of those silos, while still remaining in your institution.
So together, you then get to explore how you actually can work together and how to connect your ideas. So to give you an example that we also illustrated here, a group in one of our workshops decided to work on the chemistry of cooking together.
So now you've heard the format. Ideas develop locally, participants co-create live, and the hosts are from the outside. And you've seen what participants are left with: ideas, possible new partners, and also lots of resources.
Epistemic agency thrives when people can influence their work and their environment. That's what this format is particularly for. And it travels well. So far, we have virtually visited the University of Pittsburgh, as you've seen, University of Texas, Pratt Institute in New York, and Stanford University. Participants told us the most helpful part was, quote, getting concrete suggestions for activities we can actually try.
So, no matter if you're at a small liberal arts school, a large research-intensive public university, our format of the traveling workshop is adaptable, and it works in all contexts as far as we're concerned. As the feedback shows, the best part for participants was, quote, chatting with colleagues from other disciplines.
And overall, faculty also expressed that, quote, recommendations of both workshop conductors and other participants were useful in moving forward with trying to better support non-major students.
So, if you want to try this, we suggest you start small. Pick a single topic that you're interested in, find a partner, and set up just a couple meetings to co-create a short workshop. Then take your chance and send an email. Maybe it's someone you met here. See if they're willing to host your traveling workshop.
And just as we often like to tell faculty, don't forget to get feedback to be able to continue building and refining your own traveling workshop.
And who knows, it could be you all standing here in 2028 sharing what you've accomplished together.
So whether you're part of a one-person teaching center or a larger team, collaborating and letting educational development travel can bring together different experiences and create something meaningful for even more people.
And if after all that you still aren't sure where to start, let our traveling workshop travel to your institution. We'd love to work with you.
So all you need to do is scan the code, sign up, and explore our virtual roadshow. Because knowledge doesn't have to stay local. Let's let it travel and let agency grow with it. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, and welcome to all the people who came a little bit late. I just want to announce the ICED talks in the last few days, they were done differently. We decided to stick to the 10-minute talk format, so we will have our next talker in a minute, and then we will have the third talk afterwards, and we will still have time for Q&A in the end, so everybody who wants to stay for Q&A is heartily invited to. And now I'm very happy to welcome Jessica, Jessica from Portugal, and we are looking forward to your talk. Would you like to use the microphone?
No, I will use this one. Thank you very much. Okay, hello, good morning everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Jessica Carvalho. I'm here with my dear colleagues, Patrícia Chufra and Nuno Oliveira, and today...
Sorry, is it
Yes, it is. Sorry. Hello, good morning again. So, I was saying that my name is Jessica Carvalho. I'm here with my dear colleagues, Patrícia Chufra and Nuno Oliveira, and today I will share an early stage case from Nova School of Business and Economics in Portugal, in Lisbon. We have a beautiful campus right by the sea, and you are all invited to visit us. I would like to start by clarifying that TAKE is still a young center. Many initiatives are still being designed, tested, adjusted, and so I will use TAKE as an early stage case and as a design case, a case that we want to share with you. We want to share with you that sometimes. I'm sorry. So a case that helps us reflect on what happens when academic development is intentional positioned not only as a support function, but as a strategic institutional actor. Let me begin with a simple question. Where does academic development sit in your institution? I mean, not only in the formal organization chart, but in practice. In the organizational chart, we know that everything looks clear, peaceful, and strategically aligned. So, in your institution, is it mainly a support service? something faculty turn to when they need help, when they need support? Is it a pedagogical partner helping faculty reflect, experiment, and improve? Or it's becoming a strategical institutional actor? In many institutions, the answer is probably somewhere in between, and that is where the interesting questions begin. Because when the position of academic development changes, its role, legitimacy, and influence also change. Across higher education, centers for teaching and learning are being asked to do much more than provide workshops of individual support. They are increasingly expected to contribute to accreditation, learning strategies, program review, curriculum transformation, digital learning strategies, and student engagement. Teaching and learning are no longer treated only as matters of individual classroom practice. They are now linked to institutional identity, quality assurance, and the student experience. But this creates a challenge. Academic development as traditional operates to trust, relationships, and collegial engagement. So, what happens when it moves closer to governance, policy, and institutional decision-making? This is the context in which TAKE was created at Nova SPE. From the beginning, TAKE was not designed only as a service unit for individual faculty support. It was intentionally positioned at the intersection of three domains. The first one, faculty development, supporting teachers, teaching assistants, and program teams. The second one was teaching policy, contributing to standards, readiness, quality assurance, and pedagogical alignment. And the third, institutional governance, connecting teaching, innovation with program strategy, accreditation, and institutional priorities. So, TAKE is not simply responding to isolated requests. It is being designed as a coordinate mechanism between pedagogical practice, institutional priorities, and organizational learning. But this also means that TAKE operates in a space of tension. So, in this talk, I want to focus less in what TAKE does and more on what this position reveals about academic development. The central idea I want to propose is that academic development becomes strategically influential when three forms of positioning comes together. The first is relation credibility. Academic development needs trust, it needs legitimacy with faculty, it needs to be seen as useful, pedagogical, grounded, and respectful of academic autonomy. The second is governance integration. If academic development remains completely outside institutional decision-making, its influence may remain local or fragmented. Governance integration gives academic development visibility, durability, and policy relevance. The third is evidence-mediated influence. Teaching innovation needs evidence, but it also needs mechanisms through which evidence can inform program review, accreditation, strategy, and decision-making. So strategic agent does not come from one dimension alone, it emerges from the balance between the three: trust, governance, and evidence. And this is the key message of the talk. In the TAKE case, these three dimensions are being translated into practice through three examples. The first is instructor training plan. This links faculty development with teaching readiness, quality assurance, and program governance. The second is BIP, Business and Economics Educational Practice. BIP is a development ecosystem that supports active learning, project-based learning, curricular alignment, and communities of practice. It is not only about offering training, is it about building shared pedagogical language and collective capacity. The third example is development of evaluation and feedback loops. We are working on ways to collect and interpret evidence, but about faculty development, about pedagogical innovation, student engagement, and teaching impact. But our goal is not just accountability. Our goal is to feed evidence back into program review, accreditation cycles, and long-term educational strategy. Together, these mechanisms show that TAKE is trying to move just from isolated interventions towards institutional strategic learning, but this also creates tensions. The first tension is between support and governance. Academic developed unities often gain legitimacy because they are perceived as supportive rather than controlling. They are places where faculty can ask questions, share difficulties, experiment, and improve without feeling judged. But when academic development becomes connected to policy, training requirements, or quality assurance, perceptions may change. In the take case, the instructor training plan creates coherence and makes pedagogical development part of institutional quality. But it also raises a delicate question. How do we influence policy without becoming compliance-driven? The second tension is between relation credibility and formal authority. Academic development work, much of academic development work depends on informal influence, conversations, peer networks, trust, small trials, and shared reflection. But when academic developers gain formal mandates, reporting lines or policy roles, the relationship changes. Formal authority can amplify influence. It can give academic development access to leadership conversations and strategic process. But it can also change how faculty see its role. Advice may be perceived as expectation, support may be perceived as evaluation, and partnership may be perceived as policy implementation. So the challenge is not to choose between trust and authority, the challenge is to hold both carefully. The third tension is between evidence and interpretations. Institutions are collecting more and more teaching-related data. Student feedback, engagement data, learning analytics, program evaluations, accreditation indicators, and participation in training. All of these can generate useful evidence. But, as you know, that alone does not create organizational learning. Many of us know what happens to beautiful dashboards and long reports. They are presented once, admired politely, and then quality achieved. Evidence becomes meaningful only when there is space to reflect on it. For evidence to matter, it must enter conversations. It must help program leaders, faculty, students, and institutional bodies ask better questions. So the question is not what data do we collect, the deeper question is how we will analyze teaching evidence and how. At this point, I would like to invite a brief moment of reflection. Which of these tensions feel most familiar in your own context? Is the tension between support and governance, trust and authority, or between evidence and interpretation? And perhaps more importantly, what trade-offs are currently being managed in your institution, maybe without being made fully explicit? I would like to close by returning to the broader question of strategic agency. The take case suggests that academic development cannot become strategically influential simply by being placed closer to institutional power. Position matters, but it's not enough. Strategic academic development requires a careful balance between trust, governance, and evidence. If there is trust without governance, academic development may remain local and fragmented. If there is governance without trust, it may create resistance or be seen as compliance. And if there is evidence without interpretation, it may become reporting rather than learning. And this is the question I would like to leave with you. What is gained and what is lost when academic development becomes strategic? Thank you.
Thank you very much. We heard two very different, very interesting talks already. One on collegial collaboration across continents, and the one from Jessica now from Portugal on strategic involvement and how we can do this as academic development. And now we have our third talk. I welcome Yi-Kun Sun. Yi-Kun Sun, is this right? Welcome.
Oh, sorry.
You can also use the microphone.
I'm so sorry.
Would you like to use this one or the?
Yeah, I'll use this one. Sorry. Thank you for the introduction. And while we are finding the PPT, I hope, yes, it is this one. Okay, Thank you so much. So my name is Yiqun Sun. Thank you for pronouncing it. It's very difficult, so I have an English name called Olivia. It's something that I just randomly found in the dictionary, but that's how Chinese names goes. So I'm an educational developer, and I'm also assistant professor of practice in Xi'an Jiaotong Liverpool University. And it's not in Xi'an, it's not in Liverpool, it is in Suzhou in China. So, but anyway, we are a joint venture university, so we do give out a Chinese degree and at the same time a degree from the Liverpool University. And we have quite a lot of students. I think it's probably more than 20,000, or maybe I'm not counting the postgraduate, but there's a lot of students. Anyway, today I'm going to... Oh, it's not that one. No. Why did it change? It was fine last time. So today I'm going to, while we are finding the presentation, today I'm going to share about how we did this, the mentorship program to help us, our faculty, to incorporate AI into learning and teaching. So in my institution, AI is very strong. The leadership has a vision that AI would be everywhere. And at this point of time, we are already asking faculty to incorporate AI in all the curriculum. From the module level, we call it course level, module level. It's kind of like, I think, a British vocabulary, to program level. And with the institutional-wise, we also have like 3-year strategies with 5 pillars that not only goes with teaching, but also covers research, student support, administrative support, and everything else. So there is this funny saying from my colleague says, if you don't do AI in my institution, it's very likely you won't get a good rating in the annual review. So that is the reality. And this is why we are trying very hard to help our teachers to be able to do this in institutional mandate. And goes back to our previous presentation. I really liked when you say it is great that CTLs being elevated to this strategic level, but how are we going to maintain our mandate, our integrity, while also trying to do the institutional vision without losing, not just driving the institutional, what the president wants, right? So what we did with AI, so back to 2023 when ChatGPT suddenly get really, really viral, we started to do these raising awarenesses. We did several workshops. And at the same time, we developed this framework that helps our faculty to maybe find a place that they can enter. So the framework builds the AI literacy frameworks, and at the same time, Bloom's taxonomy. And it's from basic, intermediate, and advanced. If you are interested in finding this, it's here. It's published as a book chapter. We also did what many institutions do, which is try to find where our students and faculties are. So we did annual surveys for 3 years. Some of that is also published somewhere. I didn't include the full list because there is no room. But we felt that we've done workshops. We've done workshops with our generative AI. I mean, the AI, the school of AI, because sometimes we do need to go into a little bit of fundamentals of AI for people to understand why AI hallucinates, right? And for people who wanted to do more, like colleagues with, from the computer science, they probably would appreciate that there are some more in-depth guidance. But we feel that there's still something missing. It feels like our faculty, even though they are being bombarded with all sorts of workshops, information resources, they still feel sometimes they needed to work with the individual, and this is where this program comes in. So with this program, from the title, you can see from beginning to advanced, we already mapped everyone's AI, the AI literacy, right? And they can see where they are already on this spectrum. And with this program, we have mentors who are obviously a little higher at the spectrum, and we also have mentees who wanted to progress. And we said, okay, in this program, the mentors would be paired with the mentees, and there would be, the expectation is to be met, for them to meet monthly, and they need to set goals, and also they need to do some sharing and also work on something. And we do provide a lot of support, like workshops. We had some templates. Later I'm going to give you a QR code that you can scan with a lot of resources that we've made available for teachers. Just to provide a structure for them, because sometimes when I was working with my own mentor, actually, it feels like sometimes we don't know how to progress, and if we set a goal, it's a lot easier. And also conversational guide, and also we pair instructional designers to help them, also the COP sessions. And this is a timeline. It is matched with their annual review cycle. So as I was mentioning, in my institution, it's like you need to evidence something that you are doing with AI, otherwise you might get asked, why are you not doing anything related to AI, right? So we matched the annual review cycle and gave people a chance to get the evidence from this program and to show it to their line manager or head of the department. So as you can see, it started with an orientation, and then we had some, meetings that's individually, but we have the COP sharing, and then there are more, individual meetings. Then we expect people to submit the meeting logs and to the portfolio and the video or whatever. So this is a QR code. If you Google it online, you'll also find the information there, and some of that is behind the login of the institution because it contained personal details. But if you want some resources, get in touch with me. I will be more than happy to share with them. So basically some resources and structures we gave people. So recognition of hard work, which is very important for our mentor and mentees, the certificate for mentorship in AI integration, but we tell them that they needed to submit their meeting logs, and the expectation is 5. Right? You meet every month. So it's not just in the group, yes. In the group discussion, there are like free riders. We don't want that to happen. And at the same time, we provide award, we made it very easy. So basically with the meeting log and also the report or video at the end to showcase some of the things that they did. So this is a program snapshot. We had 120 staff sign up, 51 mentor-mentee co-hosts, and 36 pairs submitted meeting logs, and we awarded 7 with 16 submitted for mentor award and 5 for the mentee award. So lessons learned. I know I need to rush. So we did, when we were doing the pairing, and we asked them, and the survey is actually not online, but you can contact me if you want the survey. So we asked the teacher, do you want to be paired with somebody within your discipline or with outside of the discipline? Some people say yes, some people say no. And ask them to give a bit of information about themselves and also their expectations. So they found that cross-disciplinary pairing was really useful. And going back to what you were saying about the pair with people outside of their disciplinary, and also they really loved the recognition. But at the same time, they felt that the technology and resources and their expertise sometimes constrains what they can do. And they wanted longer time to work on this program. So And we also found that when we were giving out the award, I just wanted to give out something. And considering that we had a certain amount of members and a certain amount of mentees, it was like 10% of each category to get the award. However, people said, when I worked with my mentor-mentee, we are a pair, and you are giving me my mentor maybe the award, my mentee not the award. It's a little difficult, even though at the end we found mostly the awardees were pairs, not all of them. So next time we're going to just do pairs. So I guess that's it. We are doing more next semester, starting from September. And we have, I don't know if it shows this, we've already collected all these information, the meeting logs, reflection logs, event recordings, sticky notes, whatever. So we're writing up a paper based on this, but we are doing more to see the long-term effect, basically, more longitudinal study. So if you are interested in maybe doing your institution, I would love to hear, and maybe we can write up a paper together about how it works in different contexts and different cultures. And also, would love more collaboration in terms of this longitudinal study. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this interesting presentation, and I think it's wonderful how they connect to each other. So you are also strategically involved, but you draw on collegial collaboration in your mentee-mentor system. So, as I announced when we started today, we had the presentations now. I would like to invite all the speakers up front, and we open for Q&A now. If somebody would like to leave, feel free to do so in this little moment. And otherwise, I would say I have the microphone for you, and yeah, and I can pass the other one around for questions.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I arrived a little late, so apologies to the first two presenters. I have a question for the final presenter, but maybe this works for all of you. So when you're talking about the demands that the university places on teachers, in this case to implement AI, I understand in all programs, maybe in all courses, I don't know, but anyway, widespread use of AI, and you're trying to facilitate this. So two questions there. Reactions, in a way, they're sort of forced because they have these, you said they have these appraisal talks and it's problematic if they haven't done this. So attitudes, but also when you have these pairs with the mentors, mentees, sharing of good practice, have you disseminated sort of some of the results from that, and how have you done that? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. Yes, resistance. I think if it's done so quickly at such a scale, there is always resistance. I'm from an educational technology background. If you ask my own stand, I would say it's just like what the theory told us. There are early adopters with educational technology, and there are people who are watching, and maybe they will adopt later. But because of this institutional mandate, everybody has to do it. So definitely a lot of issues there. But because people have to do it, we are just providing tools that can make their jobs easier. I guess people who are really unhappy would just leave the institution because it seems like there's not too much way of pushing back. I think it also connects to the cultural. In the culture in China, it's the people are expected to do what the president and the senior management ask them to do. They don't ask very often because they do understand that we have employees from maybe 200 countries and everybody's culture is different. but they were very forceful in this regard, and people gave them their compliance in a way. But anyway, in terms of the best practice, so you might have noticed that we have 2 COPs that's in this program. And it's during this COP, we ask people to share how they manage their relationship, because it's like any relationship, it breaks or has problems or have sweet moments. I was surprised that I get, because there were 120 of them, I got lots of emails and telling me how their relationship went, and I felt that I'm managing, I'm just peeking the life of some teenagers or whatever. But that's pretty interesting. But yes, so one theme is about how you manage the relationship. Another theme is like how, what kind of cool things have you done? And now, even though there is some problem with forcing this AI thing on everyone, the university did provide a lot of ways for people to create impact, including fundings. Quite a lot of fundings. So but many of these pairs managed to publish, they managed to get university fundings, they got national fundings or maybe international fundings. So they also shared their experiences as well. And that is documented through this program, through pilot or through recordings, and we disseminate it back to the participants of this program. Thank you.
Maybe while you think about some questions, I just have a observation. In our university, it's not mandatory. I'm from Switzerland, Zurich, but we have an institution-wide kind of commitment statement or policy, you could call it, where the university says we support our instructors, but also our students to get AI literate. And so there is this more polite demand to do something. And also we know from surveys from Germany, but also from institutional surveys at my institution with students, that they really want to get instruction in their disciplines on AI use. And so they are also often lost. And what in my case, in educational development programs, what we saw, we introduce AI more interwoven into everything, but not as a big topic. And so we have always participants, especially from the humanities often, who are very reluctant, and in the beginning they say, I don't want to do anything with AI. And then they have these talks with their peers. And as you also mentioned in your workshop, in your traveling workshop, this is the most important thing often that happens. And then they see how others use AI with their students, and then they get maybe one idea how they can enter, as you said, this topic for themselves or with their students. And so I just wanted to ask back, are these also observations that you made?
Do you want to start, or are you asking all of us, or should I start?
Whoever feels that they can answer.
Thank you. So I think at our institution, it's rather similar to what you were describing, although we have offerings, and I think what you talked about is something that we think about a lot as well, which is the more AI, like initially we felt like we need to share knowledge, but now we feel like we need to make this collaboration, this conversation between people happening, because we feel like there's a differentiation now between the knowledge levels of people with AI after a few years. And now there's more and more teachers where you feel like they just want to talk, they want to explore, they want to develop something. So I really like your suggestion with that. Also, I I feel like I'm advertising, but I also want to say that, like, I think a traveling workshop would also be an opportunity to do something like this as well, to talk about AI as well. I mean, it's low threshold, particularly if it's an institution where it's not mandatory.
Sure, I can talk a little bit about what we do with AI because we've observed some similar things. One of the programs that I do is called an AI test kitchen because I've been holding like these book clubs and I'll be like, did you try anything from the book? And they're like, no, we just read it and want to talk about it, but we're afraid to try things. So I was like, okay, let's make that next step. So in the test kitchens, basically I'll take the prompts from the book, and I've been primarily using the Teaching with AI by, I think it's Bowen and Watson. And so we'll just pick a really small section from the book, and I will do some tweaks with the prompts just to make them, more applicable across disciplines, because the program is for any discipline, and then like actually have them do the prompt, and we talk about what resources are available through our institution, and they get to do that cross-disciplinary discussion about how different ways of using AI works. So also, if you're interested in that, I can also share some of my slides if you're interested.
Thank you. I would say I want to share a bit of where the faculties come from in this program. In my institution, because we are EMI, English as Media of Instruction, Transnational University, we do have a big body of language teachers. And in this program, I see, actually, I might be a bit off, but it might be 35% close to the people who sign up are language teachers. And they were actually doing a lot of very innovative things. And when they needed help, the university provides help, and also pair them with maybe computer science or AI school background faculty, help them to do these industry level, which is like products that they can roll it out to the market. So my university also pushes a lot about integrative education, which is deeply connected to the industry, which is getting students to identify authentic issues, and then work with project-based learning or other forms of learning to work on that issue, learn around that issue, and then give it back to the society with something that's actually working. So it's kind of like authentic assessment or authentic learning. It depends on how the faculty designs it. So I think this gets back, even though we call it like AI mentorship, it actually connects, because with AI, it's something that the society is talking about, and it really lowers the threshold of creating something that's really wonderful, like an app or website. It's just minutes. When I show in my workshop about how you can use AI in your teaching, I usually show the HTML ML file that it's so easily created, and also with the multimodal things that AI creates. Yesterday I shared about how I worked with students to create like graphic kind of novels to illustrations to teach students about academic integrity. So that is something that the teachers really appreciate. So at first they might resent a little bit, but if people who really resent, they probably won't sign up for this program. So I felt that even though it's called AI, it's actually connecting back to something that is not kind of like something that's just a buzzword, but also something a lot deeply influenced in terms of students' learning experience.
Well, in our school, we are also pushing a lot to AI. Last year we created a new institute, it's a knowledge center in partnership with Harvard, dedicated to AI, and we are trying to integrate it into our curriculum, in all our offer of bachelor's and master degrees. But well, we, as I told you, we do have a lot of autonomy. Faculty has a lot of autonomy. So sometimes we need to, we are working on ways to attract faculty to our workshops, to our initiatives, and this is our main challenge nowadays, I think, because yes, there are early adopters. There are a lot of faculty that they get deep into AI immediately, but we have resistance also. So it's part of our work and part of the approach of the school to push it and to offer different kinds of initiatives to not just to faculty but also to our teams in order to have AI integrated in all our activities. Well, but it's still a journey. Okay.
Thank you very much for your thoughts. Are there questions? Have questions come up in the meantime? And while you think about this, I just wanted to ask there's one. Wonderful.
Hello, my name is Sara. I'm from Lund University in Sweden. Thank you so much, all three of you, for super interesting presentations. Yesterday, I was in a workshop and had another really interesting presentation. And we were talking about the identity or the purpose of academic developers and teaching and learning centres. And on the one scale was as an identity as a service to operationalize what management wants to do. And on the other end was an autonomous, research-based institution that provides faculty with, research-based ways of going about their teaching and learning. And I think that this is an interesting example of the one, but also the tension of how the one kind of also needs the other, that these two identities need to somehow converge, or do they converge? And how management also seems to want both, but the one seems to take over very often. Obviously, this is different in different contexts and different cultures, but I just wondered if this is something that has come up perhaps in your example about, when management pushes. You were talking about resistance at the faculty level, but is there resistance within the teaching and learning centre as well? And the tensions with what is our purpose here? What are we supposed to be doing? And are we supposed to be doing this?
Yes, this in our center, Teaching Excellence and Innovation Center of Nova SBA, we have this reality, and we are trying to find a balance, because we know that, yes, there is tensions, there is resistance, we need to have research, we need to have evidence and information in order to build the best framework and ecosystem of academic development. But formal authority, strategic approaches, they are needed as well. So in our opinion, the balance between both is needed, and that's the main challenge, and you need to navigate in this uncertainty.
Thank you for these wonderful questions. I think maybe because of the culture I'm in, and we cannot really say no, we're not doing it. So what we are doing is that we say yes, we can do it, definitely, but we do it our way. So, for example, I've been just asked to, support the teachers in terms of creating AI agents, because AI agents, they are asked, why AI agents? And they basically, they don't say it, but I can see it's like a low-hanging fruit. It's really easy to evidence that we have AI in terms, curriculum maybe takes longer, but AI agent, maybe it's easier for the management to say, hey, okay, we've done this. But when I'm doing it, I did the SOTO kind of way, and when I work with teachers, I also encourage them. And with mentorship, as you probably heard, that we had funded projects where I encourage people to think about when they're doing intervention. I encourage them to think about how you are going to publish it, because you are going to be evaluated with what you publish. So what is the impact? When you go to your annual review, it's about publication impact, and you need to think about that. I also teach the PG Cert program, which is a postgraduate certificate program for teachers in order to teach in British, system, universities in like a kind of British system. But now, I don't know if people are familiar with PG Cert. You give me a, okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, yes. So teachers are required to take that program. So in that program, we teach action research. And I would constantly use that as example. Action research is about doing intervention and test your intervention. AI is great. You are forced to do it, and it's highly publishable. Why not do it? So coming back to the AI agent, so they told us that you need to help the teachers to do more with AI agents. I said, okay, maybe we can create a framework. And when I was doing the framework, I did more of a research approach. We did the desktop analysis. We surveyed our teachers. We also talk to them. So it's a research-informed framework, not just something that somebody think about. So long story short, we do what they want, but in our way.
So my context is a little bit different. So there's no formal requirement for anyone to use AI. And I think related to that, I was part of a team, Gilbert et al., and like a journal of public health education. And basically we looked at adopters across disciplines. And so it turned out that public health faculty were like the most resistant, and engineering and computing faculty were arguably the most into adopting the AI. But with that information, I took that to the AI task force when we were thinking about what are going to be our guidelines university-wide. And so what we landed on is that every faculty has to have a policy, but they can design their own policy. Obviously, like if you're in a coordinated course with multiple instructors, things like that, there might be a little bit less choice that you get to make, but presumably everyone gets to make the choice. And we also use Bloom's taxonomy as kind of like the basis to try to help faculty figure out what's going to make the most sense for their course context. The class I've been teaching is a high recall class, and so AI is obviously not going to allow me to assess learning outcomes, right? So we try to have programming that helps them think through what's going to be the appropriate policy for their course, and accordingly, the programs that we do have in other spaces about AI in our teaching center keep that in mind, that like we might be wanting to implement AI, but we also might want to be redesigning things that encourage students to be less reliant on AI.
That would have been my question. So I'm trying to keep it very, very short. I think actually from listening to you all, I think what becomes clear is that AI is a good example to think through this tension that you were mentioning actually. We have guidelines that are very free, and we also, like within our university law, have a paragraph, like the first paragraph says that university teaching is free, which is an argument we often get when there is resistance. But I think what we've been trying to do is really show the advantages of exploring it. We are a very big institution, so sometimes it's really hard to keep track of what the general ideas actually are, because there's sometimes we see a very selective group, right? If we offer an AI offering, it's a very selective group that decides to come But what we also did is we went into the faculties, which was tricky because I feel like there were some situations where we really had to make sure that the participants didn't feel like we are coming from the rectorate and basically just telling them, this is the policy, these are the guidelines, this is how you have to implement it. But we really tried to open up a creative and also, you know, like sometimes very emotional discussion on what these guidelines mean within the specific discipline. And yeah, I think for us educational developers, particularly with AI, it's also important to be like, sometimes it's not our responsibility to change someone's mind. And we can't do that. And maybe just offering things and then being like, it's your agency to decide what you do with it is the answer.
I think this is a very good final note to close on. So we have 9:30, and a big thank you again and applause for our presenters. As almost in every conversation, AI has taken over finally. But I think it was wonderful to hear the different perspectives on. And thank you for your wonderful questions, and have a good break. Thank you.
as well. Come in, come in. We drew. Come join us here up front, if you like. So we're going to wait for a couple more minutes because I think some people might still be in the coffee section. So we're not going to start too late, but maybe 3-4 minutes. So many files. These files? Come up front. Perfect. Sorry. Hello.
Twirling around.
Perfect. Morning.
You have to smile if you sit there. Make us feel happy.
And just go.
We're nervous.
No.
Little nervous. So, quick check with the tech guys. Hello over there. You want to start the stream or something? Because we were going to start right now. So just as an information for you. Okay. Welcome, everyone. It is so good to see so many people here. We were thinking like, okay, it's a Friday. It's right after the coffee break after an intense night of dancing. So I'm really, really happy that so many of you guys are here. We are the symposium on internationalization, basically. And I'm pretty sure that the slides will be up in a second, right? Yeah, I can see some slides. Perfect. Okay, so, and I'm standing right here in the way. My name is Angelika Thielsch from the University of Göttingen. I'm pretty happy to be here with that wonderful crowd of people. Actually, we're missing one person, but we are here and talking about how to become agents for curriculum internationalization, and we are here representing different countries in which we facilitated. We conducted research on this really specific topic, and yeah, I'm so happy that people are interested in this topic. Let me just introduce you quickly to this wonderful crowd up here.
we're all sitting, you see that? It's the first that I see a symposium sitting here, but we thought, well, why not? Yeah, because we understand each other as really one group. So the first person is Evike de Loo. She's from the Hague University of Applied Sciences. Next one is Becky Bergman, and you are from, oh please, my eyes are so bad, from... Ah, thank you so much. I'm so bad with that. Okay, that's Becky. She's a great dancer. All I need to know. Okay, so the next one is Lucy Weissova. You're from Halmstad University, and some of you might already know Tony Roxa, who is from Lund University. The person who's missing today is Pune Eftekari, who is also from Lund University, and I hope that she sees us right now online, and we think about you, All right, so she couldn't join us here, but nonetheless, her ideas, her thoughts will be here presented in this symposium as well. And we are going to talk about how to become an agent for a curriculum internationalization and ask really how is that possible and what do we actually mean by internationalizing the curriculum? Yeah, I mean, we're here in an international context, we're in an international conference, and we are, I so far didn't perceive any session where we really talk about the internationalization stuff, right? I mean, we're living it, but really talking about it is something that we are going to do right here. Just to get you on track, I mean, there's really a vast discourse on international education, on how to internationalize the curriculum, and I can really just, if you haven't checked it out so far, do so. There's really quite a lot of things going on and a lot of research that you can connect to, and we have here wonderful experts who all did research on that in this symposium. And just to get you some ideas what we have in the back of our minds when we talk about curriculum internationalization. That is on the one hand that we were talking about how can you foster a global perspective and intercultural learning in curriculum situations. Yeah, so everything that we think about is related to the global perspectives and the intercultural learning. But the next term, of course, is one of the most tricky ones that I, at least in my experience as education developer over the last nearly 20 years, experienced is curriculum. Yeah? So what actually is curriculum? If we want to change the curriculum to become more international, we have to be aware of what we're actually talking about. And this is why in the internationalization context, we differentiate between the formal, the informal, and the hidden curriculum. There are even more dimensions of curriculum, but these are really the ones that you have to keep in mind, especially the hidden curriculum, the things that are unspoken, but nonetheless expected when we are in different settings. So we are talking about that, at least in the back of our minds we're doing so. And all of this is surrounded around three core concepts in the internationalization research. The one is the internationalization of the curriculum, IOC. The other is the internationalization at home. Yeah, so people don't have to move. They can also have an international experience in their home universities. So IAH, it's a bit more difficult. And those two terms, those two concepts have been merged over the last years also by our dear Pune, our dear colleague who isn't here right now, and she coined the term internationalization of the curriculum at home, because we should always talk about both of these elements connected. Yeah? Not only how to get the international perspective in the curriculum, but also on how to foster and enable this at home. So, the last thing that you can see on the slide, beyond that huge word cloud, which I just used to get you some more details on, some more expressions, some more concepts that you can look up later if you want to, related to that discourse, is that in a nutshell, and that is a saying that Elizabeth Jones, one of the huge grand dames in this discourse, talked about quite a lot. In internationalization of the curriculum, we don't really want to just talk about how to move people, but we want to talk about how to move minds. Yeah, so, and this is what this is really about. Okay, in this symposium, we're focusing on two specific groups, two specific target groups when we're talking about how to become an agentic person in this context, and we're focusing also on the academic teaching staff, as well as on the educational developers. Yeah, so both are needed if you want to make internationalization really work. And we have three different talks, as you already see in the program, as you saw in the program, and they are all interconnected. There are, as you can see, a lot of people here upstairs, and they all had different research projects, different project surroundings dealing with these topics, and we put them all basically in a mixture and just had 3 altogether combined focuses. And the first is that we talk about, okay, so what is actually the situation when we talk about an international classroom? That is a presentation where Becky and Pune, well, in her absence, not here, but still where we talk about the teachers' perspectives on internationalization, to then think about, okay, if teachers need that, what is actually the thing that education developers might provide, and how can they actually be engaged in this context? Yeah, I have no idea how many of you are really talking about internationalization as part of their profile as education developers, but if you are doing so, why did you do that? Yeah, and this is what we're talking about in the second presentation, which will be with Pune's ideas and Evike's ideas, and I might jump in there as well to present something because we're working together as well. And then having all these information already, we jump to the third presentation, which is on, okay, we know what they need, both groups, so let's just check out what we from recent research know about how you really can foster these kind of personal developments, professional developments of these groups. Okay, so far so good. That's what's happening up here, but you're here as well. And we want to hear your thoughts, we want to connect to what you're thinking, what your experiences are. And of course, that is also why we asked you to come up front. Sometimes there will be tiny breaks in between the presentations where we will ask you to think about something, to possibly catch up with the person in front of you or beside of you. So to engage in discussion, we already organized a Padlet where you also can just put your thoughts into this Padlet. There you can already find the slides, all slides. And when I say all slides, we have some more slides in that presentation on Padlet than we are going to present here, just because of the missing of Pune. But also at the end of the slides, you can find the references, because we are trying to be really pragmatical here, not too focusing on the theoretical. Well, we are focused on the theories, but we're not explaining all the backgrounds, but you have all the information in the references. And you can also find 4 profile slides on our 4 wonderful researchers in this area, just to get you a better idea what's really going on there. Yeah? So far so good? You're all with me? It's not too warm in here? Okay, so wonderful. Then I will really would like you to start off thinking about how the international classroom can emerge. And Evike and Becky, please come up front.
Okay, so good morning. I have a bit of a split identity today. I'm Evike, not Pune, but as Pune can't be here, I'll do my best to share a little bit of her research because it builds up our narrative along these 3 mini sessions. So let me just get the clicker. So let's zoom in on the first stakeholder group, teachers. And let's meet some of them, because as educational developers, we support them and help them grow in their role. So let's take a couple of teachers like Lee, Naomi, Sylvie, and Hans. And of course, we realize that teachers are not a homogeneous group. They teach different subject matters, have different experiences, different personalities, teaching qualities. And another thing they might differ in is their disciplinary affiliation. And some of you may have heard of the Biglan classification of academic disciplines. But in case you haven't, let me just very briefly explain and how that might impact the needs of teachers in IOC. I will use IOC, Internationalization of the Curriculum, because otherwise it becomes such a tongue twister. So Biglan was triggered by observing that teachers behave very differently in different fields and wanted to know why. And so he was able to identify 2 main dimensions. There are actually 3, but I'm focusing on 2. So disciplines can differentiate in being either hard or soft. Hard, and this has to do with the degree of consensus on the body of knowledge within a discipline. So hard disciplines like physics and chemics have a high consensus on the knowledge. So they tend to focus on more universality, facts, rules that apply, whereas the soft disciplines are much more interpretative. So there is a lower degree of consensus. Things are much more open to debate. The other dimension is between pure and applied, and this answers the question, what is knowledge generated for or needed for? So the pure disciplines focus very much on creating knowledge for the sake of knowledge, for theory building, whereas applied, as the term already suggests, is more knowledge for being applied to practical situations. And that leaves us with 4 quadrants. I will not go into that, but you can see that there might be different interpretations, different orientations of teachers. And so what Pune was interested in was there's very little research on how teachers actually understand and enact internationalization of the curriculum. And she applies the Bigland framework to her research. So what she did was she realized, first of all, through a systematic literature review, is that most studies only focus on a single institution or a single country. And in her research, she focused on kind of getting a global perspective and carried out 2 quantitative studies trying to see how teachers understand and enact IOC. So her main findings are actually that the Bigland classification can be identified in IOC as well. So for example, the reasons why teachers engage with internationalization of the curriculum, their objectives, their awareness and attitudes towards whether it's relevant or not, very easily can be mapped onto Bigland's classification, except for one, which is a main finding. Because teachers tend to behave almost similarly when acting upon internationalization of the curriculum. So that led to her conclusion that disciplinary culture doesn't control teacher behavior, but it is helpful for academic developers to really understand that they might have different needs and see different relevance. And to understand that, as we're aware of, that the behavior is very significantly mediated by local and national contexts. And this is something that educational developers are very mindful and sensitive of. So context matters. So this is a first layer of understanding towards teachers, but let's peel back some more layers and get to know one of our teachers, Sylvie. And I'll hand over to Becky.
Thank you, Evike. Wonderful. Yeah, I mean, as always with these categories, we get these very broad generalizations that we don't always necessarily recognize for individuals. And we're going to get into one individual then. And this is an individual teacher I interviewed. I interviewed many teachers as part of looking at how they're working with internationalization in their classrooms. And welcome to Sylvie. Then obviously this is not really Sylvie, this is not her real name. But she works in Sweden at a technical university. She teaches electrical engineering. She's been doing that for 10 years. So she's quite experienced. And as is usual with engineering education, she has large classes of students, which is challenging. But she's very motivated and really wants it to work for her students. And as is the norm with engineering education, her groups of students are very international. Typically more than 20 nationalities in the classroom. And she would like to work with this at the same time. As we know, there's all the other pressures that we all have. So this is part, as Angelica already mentioned, part of a project that I've been carrying out with Lucy, and you'll hear more about her side of the project in a little bit, where we looked at, there were 4 universities in 2 different countries, looking at professional development of academics for internationalization at home. Yes, we use another acronym, but they're all, yeah. And it's also part of my recently published PhD, which I defended 2 weeks ago, so my brain is still very fuzzy. But yeah, let's look at Sylvie's case then. So she's in a structure, we're all in a structure, right? She has her course and she's running this course. that courses within this program, and there are national and international goals and so on. And within engineering education, as is the case with many other programs, there are very clear international goals that our students need to be able to function in an international environment. And Sylvie's aware of that as well. In fact, they're part of the program goals that her course is part of, and they're also part of her own course goals. But in fact, she has obviously her own goals and motivations with this course. And those goals aren't necessarily the first things she's thinking of. So she decides to set up groups in the classroom where the students are mixed nationality, so-called intercultural group work, as a way to work with internationalization, as a way to get different nationalities interacting and talking with each other. But again, her goals are not primarily these sort of national, international goals, but much more there's a pragmatic element. It's a lot less marking if you put students in groups, for example. But also the fact she has worked as an engineer, and she knows that this is how engineers work. And there's a very professional competence element to her decision in grouping the students in this way. And there's an interplay here. We have the structural, and the structural I describe as anything that's written down in documentation, in strategies, in policies, in goal statements, and so on. So she's in the structural, and I've got that as colored as blue here. But then there's also this human element to it. There always is, and we heard this in the keynote yesterday. It's people meeting people, the teacher meeting the students and setting up the work there, the students meeting each other. And with group work, there's always that hope that there's going to be interaction. It doesn't always happen, but that's one goal with having group work. So now be prepared for a big color picture. So if we take Sylvie then centered in this in the structure, and she needs to make that work in some way. But there's also these human elements that she needs to work with and deal with. There's the interaction element that she would like to make that happen. That's the one reason for having the groups. It's also, this is the first course in the master program. She wants the students to feel a sense of belonging, to come into the master program. That's all. She also sees that as a role in this course. There's also conceptions of diversity. Now, I already said that she grouped the students thinking about nationality background. But there's also other diversities there, different disciplinary backgrounds, different professional backgrounds, and so on and so forth. And she's also aware of that. And how do you deal with that when you're putting groups together? And then finally, in the sort of the red part, intercultural competence, which is one main reason given for working with internationalization, that we want to foster intercultural competence in the classroom and how to make that happen. And of course, the structural and human are not strictly divided. There are dotted lines between these, and it becomes white in the middle there because, of course, these meet very often, the structural and the human. And we need to think about both aspects. So some questions for you to think about, and you can, they just do it in the Padlet, Angelica? Okay. Is it okay if we take a couple of minutes just to turn to a neighbor? Yes. Yeah. So if you think about the first question, so as educational developers, when we're meeting someone like Sylvie, she comes for help, she has this situation. What kind of support, what might we be able to provide? What does she need? We have these top-down strategies, and we know it's not just about internationalization, there are all kinds of things. How do we facilitate, help that happen in course planning? There's been a lot of talk about that during the conference. And then she has decided to solve this in a way with the group work, but of course there are many other ways, many other questions that maybe she should think about when she's working with an international classroom. So, time, 3 minutes. Just turn to your partner. 2 minutes. 2 minutes, turn to your partner or have a think in the Padlet, both work. Just think about Sylvie and some of those questions while I pass over to Avika here. Thanks. Can you use that one, please? And I'll take that.
Yeah. Okay, so it always feels very wrong to interrupt, but I'm going to try and tease you back into the setting. So, we talked a little bit about understanding the teachers and their needs and the realities. Let's turn to the other significant stakeholder, educational developers. And so what makes them engage in internationalization of the curriculum? So let's turn back to Sylvie. As happens, after 10 years of teaching electrical engineering, Sylvie feels like it's time to change over to a different career, and there were opportunities for her to grow into the role of educational developer, as happens. And so she's been working in that role for the past 2-3 years as in a Dutch-sized higher education institution in the Netherlands, mainly serving Dutch-taught programs and Dutch-speaking teachers. So as we know from Becky, is that Sylvie does have a little bit of internationalization experience because she has run international group collaboration activities in her course. And in that sense, Sylvie is quite exceptional. Sylvie likes to be participating in research, so I also interviewed her in my research. And I talked to educational developers, 40 plus in Dutch and Flemish universities, research universities and universities of applied sciences. And I found that most educational developers working in those contexts don't have any experiences with internationalization. Some do, as Sylvie does. And when I asked Sylvie and the others, what do you think internationalization of the curriculum is about? Then, yeah, I get quite a multifaceted response. So there doesn't seem to be one kind of image or association with internationalization of the curriculum. Rather, Sylvie and her colleagues think it can be many things. It can be something that's in our strategic policies, but also obviously can be done, has to do with curriculum, has to do with student development, future professionals, but also active citizens. And what about diversity, decolonization? We can talk about that as well. So actually, it's a bit puzzling to Sylvie, you know, what is my role? What is actually being asked from me? And so it is a fuzzy, multifaceted concept for Sylvie. Not sure what to do with that. However, when talking to Sylvie and us and exploring the definition, showing her, as Angelica did at the start, what is this about? Then she can envisage a certain role. And most importantly, and this is what a lot of her colleagues also said, they see a role in framing and sense-making. So in other words, together with the academic program with teachers, really unpack, so what is it? What do you want it to be? What's the scope? How deep or how broad do you envisage this? How does it align within our institutional policies and what's happening out there in the field? So a very important role in framing and sense-making. But also in preparing the grounds, helping programs map what are you already doing, trying to see how do we recognize that, because often there's already a lot there. So preparing the grounds, talking to the stakeholders, finding out, analyzing what their needs are. Obviously, supporting curriculum and learning design, but also just being that guide, that facilitator of the process, yeah, really working on a project basis and making sure that there's progress in the process. And using the connections that educational developers have across different faculties, across different departments, having those connections. So there's a lot that Sylvie thinks that she could potentially do, even though no one has asked her yet to do that. But the question in our minds is, why should I play a role? Because surely there's an international office or a global engagement office, and I'm sure that those colleagues are much better equipped to do that. But what Sylvie doesn't know is maybe not being very familiar with the work of international officers, but also that she is the missing piece in a more systemic approach, meaning that in practice, internationalization of the curriculum is carried by champion teachers who are already engaged, or a very fragmented activity-based approach. So we do a little bit here, a little bit there, but it's not really in the learning outcomes, it's not explicitly assessed. So she can be that vital piece in the puzzle. And being the disciplinary outsider in most cases is a real bonus, because Sylvie is very good at asking questions, probing, critical questions, asking the why question, which hardly ever comes up, and being that kind of connector, knowing the context, also knowing the disciplines from working across them. She is excellent at translating and contextualizing what IOC could be in the program reality. But as said as well, she's never invited to do that. So a clear condition is that someone asked her to be engaged and involve her. Now, in my research that's ongoing, I talk to educational developers that don't have a formal role, are not asked to play a role in internationalization of the curriculum. And that brings us to the next research part, which is the project that Angelica already mentioned, where we actually purposely set out to find educational developers that are engaged, that are playing a role in internationalization of the curriculum. So hand over to Angelica to share a little bit about her findings.
Thank you so much. And this is me not being me, but this is me being Pune, yeah, who would have also facilitated this element. So we're just going to give you a teeny tiny insight into a project in which we really invested some time to think about what did it take for education developers to be engaged in internationalization, with what kind of context, backgrounds, motivations, and also knowledge about the internationalization discourse did they actually become agents for internationalization. On this slide, you can see that this project was facilitated or conducted. I always say facilitated. It was conducted by a group mixed of education developers on the one hand, and on the other hand, international educators who are really focusing an expert on the international topics. And we together had some fun discussing and discovering what the perceptions of each other were during the project. But what the main focus was that we talked with education developers in 4 countries, in Sweden, in the Netherlands, in Belgium, and in Germany, about their backgrounds and why they started to focus on internationalization in their education development roles. And we have several findings that we're going to publish shortly, and we just wanted to share some with you already. And the one finding is that the engagement is there, it's happening. Sometimes people are not so aware of it, and this might be hindered by being addressed as support for the how, but seldomly for the what of what's being taught in a classroom. Yeah, so people seldomly talk with us about what they should choose as case topic or as theoretical concept, but they talk about how can I make people engage more. Another thing that we realized is that we often have a focus on in internationalization, but we don't really use the terminology. Yeah, the slide that I presented right at the beginning, like COIL, who knows what COIL is? Okay, many people know what COIL is, but the terminology basically used in internationalization, they sometimes is unfamiliar to education developers, and I have to look a bit more on the slides because they aren't mine. Okay, so but essentially we figured out that people with an education development background, although not really connecting to the internationalization discourse, have tons of things that I can bring to the questions that, for example, Sylvie, once she was a teacher, would have asked. Yeah, so how can I make people feel belonging, how can I make them engage in diverse settings? Yeah, these are questions that we're already talking about in educational development. We also figured out that quite a lot of these engagements, these first steps into international perspectives really depended on the context. Yeah, so we can see that one person who finds their way into internationalization, for example, setting up a certificate program on international teaching strategies, they do so and they continue doing so, so that these kind of engagements are pretty stable. And also we can see that the institutional context, like support from vice presidents, etc., or from management, they really have quite a huge of an impact. No wonder about that, but still nice to have it as a finding. A third finding is that the mandate really is something that seems to be missing at some points. Yeah, so if there is that kind of, yeah, please foster a global perspective in whatever you're doing as education developer, if that is something that is openly addressed, then this will happen in what we're doing as education developers, right? So possibly also, when I'm just looking to the dear colleagues from Groningen, facilitating a train the trainer for education developers might include something like, how can you include the global perspective as education developer? Yeah, if that would be something that's happening everywhere, then it would be really easy for education developers to also have that mandate for themselves. We can also see that European networks or other projects that are emerging, they somehow foster that, because we as education developers also need that connection with others to learn about their international other perspectives, which helps immensely. But that, of course, the project structures aren't really useful. Yeah, the tons of funded structures on how to foster virtual exchange is not so damn helpful as people think when fostering internationalization. So there are quite a lot of implications here. The main points I already just talked about. So the core question that we wanted you to buzz on in this second part before we switch to the third presentation, just to help you continue with us through this journey from the classroom to the education development to the next step, is basically what kind of continuous professional development might people need? What is needed that people can really get engaged as education developers? Yeah, so take another 1 minute, maybe 1.5 minutes. We want to have quite a lot of time for discussion right after this. So this is just to make you help remember what you wanted to ask possibly yet, or what's yet right now, or what's on your mind right now, and then we are going to continue.
It's still on, I think. Yes, it's on. Yeah. So, you want to use that mic? You can use whichever you want. Just, I don't want them to interact.
Yeah.
Yeah, just bring them back. Shall I?
All right, guys. I know it's always hard to be interrupted after such a short discussion time. I know, I hate that myself. When I would be sitting there, I would hate myself right now. Nonetheless, this is really just to keep you reminded of what you want to discuss later on further, because we really want to have some huge discussion with you later on. So, handing over to you, Lucy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lucy. I work at Halmstad University, where I support academics in internationalization of the curriculum. And together with Evike, we are now switching the attention to what continuing professional development works. Easy peasy, right? So my short contribution today is based on my recently finished PhD, where I looked at what... Yay! Where I looked at what CPD for internationalization of the curriculum worked for whom and under what conditions. And I used longitudinal design where it was multi-phase mixed method, where I followed academics over 1 year, and I interviewed and surveyed them at 3 points of time: before they started CPD, directly after, and then 1 year after. And well, to know what professional development works, we need to understand what academics do we have in the room. As my colleagues mentioned, they are not a homogeneous group. They might be coming to the professional development with very different starting points, expectations, motivations, different support from institution, etc. And I somehow expected those, different pathways of engagement to emerge from my research. But I was expecting something else. I was expecting the discipline pathways or, teacher versus research pathway. But for me, 6 different personas emerge based on 4 domains: motivation and expectation, previous experience, institutional and departmental support, and what academics did for action after finished CPD. And I think that all of you someday organize professional development, so I think you might recognize those personas. I will not describe them in the full, but I just mentioned them briefly. We have the experienced skeptic, those very experienced academics that have been working for 20, 30 years. They have done everything, they have seen everything, and they see really little value in CPD or internationalization of the curriculum. We have reserved observer. They are not anti-CPD, but they are a little bit hesitant, observing. We have the emerging new teachers that are very motivated, but they still don't know how the CPD can help them in their teaching because they have very limited experience. We have parachute teachers. Those are the researchers that have very little teaching, so they just jump in and out from the classroom. We have committed but constrained, and those are the champions of internationalization. They have been working for a very long time, but they are very, very tired of their own institutions. And then we have pedagogical innovators that, despite troubles and constraints, they really go extra mile to innovate the courses. So we can understand that CPD can be perceived very differently for different persons. So for whom it worked, and I looked here at 8 different outcomes that CPD can provide, from low-level outcomes as direction, as satisfaction, was the course helpful, to the learning, the confidence, change of perception, to the change of behavior, and to if there were any shifts on department or institutions. And what I saw in my research, that the low experienced and low motivated teachers, they had bigger personal gains. So they were more confident after CPD. But those high level outcomes as implementation, changes in the teaching practice, or shifts in departments were only experienced by those highly motivated academics as pedagogical innovators. This is not surprising, but what was surprising, that those pedagogical innovators, these persona experienced the most constraints, even more than committed and constrained. So you might ask why those persons still could implement changes. And the answer is that those persons possessed something called job crafting. So they could find a way how they could reshape their teaching roles. Even though they had low autonomy in many cases, they found a way around how they can implement changes in the classroom. So even though there might not be one fits all CPD, I think that what we can see that this can be translated to the design, how we design the CPD for different persons. So for instance, experienced skeptic might benefit more from peer learning and more, getting credibility from respected peer and going more beyond generic CPD. The reserved observer and emerging teacher more low stake and building confidence over time and creating safe space because they don't know a lot about IOC. And then those more motivated personas, they need more advanced CPD with more challenging and practical content and addressing also the structural barriers for them. So even though there are different outcomes and different factors, there were 4 cross-cutting features that contributed to better outcomes for all participants. And these are those 4. It was needs assessment. So if the university did needs assessment prior design of CPD, if the CPD provided practical skills to participants, if it also provided aha moments, the productive disruptions, and if there was alignment between CPD's learning objectives and participants' expectations. So basically, if CPD delivered what it promised. And going back to the engagement of academics, of course, we know it's very, very complex. At the center, you can see CPD factors that I just mentioned. And then we have 3 interconnected levels. So we have the individual level, where we see it's influenced by motivation and expectations, by previous teaching and IOC experience, the individual resources, job crafting, for instance, that I mentioned, and demographic and professional characteristics. But then we have also departmental level, of course, where teaching conditions play a role, and also departmental support. At the institutional level, we have strategic positioning and support for internationalization. We have institutional approaches to academic development and incentives and recognition, of course. So to have successful academic engagement, it's interconnection between CPD factors, individual, and then institutional and departmental factors.
Okay, and we realized that Sylvie, as an educational developer, moves around the entire wonderful model, as we can see here, but obviously needs to feel supported if she does start playing a role in internationalization of the curriculum. And as I showed you before, she can be a little lost in translation with this new concept. So if we talk about educational developers, and many of us play a role in also designing continuous professional development, then surely we should be investing in our colleagues like Sylvie. So for starters, it's crucial to get that conceptual clarity at different levels of the institution. So when an institutional strategy refers to IOC, what exactly do they mean with that? What's the rationale behind that? And what does that mean at program level? We also, from my interviews, we realized that, yeah, there's this great demand for knowledge and practical resources. We realized that we visit different conferences. The internationalization practitioners go to many very different associations, read different journals as compared to educational developers. So the two worlds hardly ever meet, and also within our institutions, they're quite separate most of the time. Supporting that need for knowledge and practical resources, but also access to internal expertise. Where are these champions of internationalization? Where are the good practices? Does that kind of travel through the institution, and where are colleagues that could help Sylvie in this new responsibility? And definitely international officers and internationalization coordinators should play a role in that, in kind of unlocking and bridging those that kind of expertise. So it works both ways. There needs to be that kind of reciprocity. And obviously, Sylvie needs time. She needs to be given the professional space to delve into this concept and find the materials. But most fundamentally, as I mentioned before, someone needs to ask and invite Sylvie. It happens through institutional commitment and leadership support, but while the rhetoric might be there, the policies might be there, it doesn't happen by magic. And we've seen before that once invited to this area, to this space, then educational developers actually have everything already inside their professional role, inside their professional identity. So let's just embrace the educational developers in that. Because the work is relational, dialogical. So building trust, but also deeply understanding the context of the academic program and academics. Makes Sylvie into that wonderful contextual translator, not just theory to practice, but also policy into practice, and what is needed there, what is relevant. That analytical sense maker, being able to ask the questions so that we can get a clear framing and understanding, and seeing how does that actually fit, not only within the institution, but also in the professional field that you're educating your students for, what is really needed. Being that boundary crossing, that wonderful skill of navigating across the institution, having that immense network internally is definitely helpful in building a robust internationalization of curriculum practice in the institution. And of course, we should not forget that Sylvie brings in huge expertise, specialist knowledge on educational development. How does that actually work? So Sylvie might not be the IOC expert, and no one expects her to be, but she can definitely significantly add and contribute to the process. So we've tried to weave in our various research strands in this symposium. So now what? What are some of the realizations? Well, I won't be reading all of that. But we do see that, on the one hand, there might be missing support structures for teachers to engage, but also the embeddedness of educational development in this very important topic makes IOC very fragile and champion-based and activity-based. We need to move beyond that. And so we have to turn to the institutional context, as mentioned before by Becky and Lucy as well. So what needs to change, and how can we influence the institutional environment so that we all develop and engage even more with the subject area? So what do we now know, and what new questions might have surfaced while listening to our presentation? So back to Angelika.
So thank you so much. And first of all, I realized that we forgot to clap after each presentation. So maybe let's have an in-between clap right now. Okay, so you guys know how symposiums work right now. We have the wonderful opportunity to listen to some thoughts of Torni, our discussant. But in between, if you would feel like standing up shortly, shaking your legs or something, there's time for that. So no one wants to stand up. Oh, we're also used to sitting. Torni, please come up front. You can also sit there. Is that okay for the streaming? It's okay? Okay, it's perfect. Yeah, no, you can stay there. You can also use that, I think. Yeah.
No, that's more rockstar, right? Okay, so who am I then? I'm an academic developer. I've always been an academic developer. In fact, it's the only profession I ever had. I never taught students. I've never been an academic teacher. I've been doing this job since 1988. So now it's 38 years. So a lot of things go through my mind listening to this research here. And some of my comments here will probably be talking to the internationalization people from an academic development stand. Because I was a bit provoked by the fact that Sylvie didn't really understand that she was part of the missing link in a fantastic system, which makes me nervous. I don't want to be a piece in a system or a piece in a jigsaw puzzle that I have to fit into so something bigger might happen. I want to be agentic. I want to do things like an academic teacher, I assume. So I have 4 things to bring up. First of all, I appreciate the use of Bigland and other frameworks here to move from a central position, I will define it, towards the levels in a university where meaning is made. And meaning is not made in the rector's office. In my take on things, the rector, the dean, the heads of departments, the study directors, the program coordinators are just part of a support structure for the real thing when it comes to teaching, and that is the interaction between students and teachers. That's where meaning and value is constructed. So using Bigland now, I see as a step out from the, I almost said closet, but I don't think that, from the office into the world of where meaning is made. I also think I see a fascination of the findings that comes out naturally. The variation, my God, they are different. And I like that. I encourage my teachers to do that, to start looking at students and start perceiving that they are different. And then not try to teach to each and every one of them, because that would destroy all teachers if there are 80 students. But to try and find ways where students can feel that they matter as individuals in a classroom where things are being sort of carried out from a planned program view from the teacher. So I see this as a first step with a long way to go. So I'm interested to maybe hear the panel say something about what would be the next step after now this research have been done, which is good research and has produced PhDs, as we heard, congratulations. But there is always a next step. So what is the next step? I realize that I might sound like the famous Swedish title of a novel called A Man Called Ove. If you've seen that movie or read that book, I become sort of grumpy here from a position, oh yeah, we did that. We've been there. And I don't think that is fair. That's not what I mean. I mean, this is a path that is unique and has to be constructed from where you started to whatever happens. But there are next steps in that. I'm interested in that. I also realize that all these things is about bridge building. From the discourse or the people of internationalization to the academic developers, building a bridge there. And many academic developers, also in this conference, have already traveled that bridge and can stand on both sides and easily do all things. But those are done, they're doing that mostly, I guess, because they are passionate about the issue, or they are being particularly asked to do so, or both. If we want volume in this, it means a gigantic mix of people. And you are here. To me, this is the internationalization people. Pune too would be here. And you are now visited the academic development sort of, what is called den, or the mystic core of the entire community. And I think that is, you're welcome, very welcome here. But what I'm interested in, if there will really be a mix of these two big movements, how would that affect the respective discourse? So what would happen to the discourse of academic development if internationalization became, as we know it, became a very much stronger strand in what we are doing. Interesting for me personally, because I do a lot of things that I, in hindsight, realize is internationalization. But I never think about it like that. People come asking me, in my masterclass, we have students from all over the world and they don't mix with the Swedish students. I think that is a pedagogical problem, and I go in there and I help them. I help out with the pedagogical problem. But if you would come and, what have you done for internationalization? Nothing. And that is a sign of me, the discourse is not in me. But if the discourse was in me, I would see that immediately. But the discourse of academic developer, we also get into the internationalization people and do things to you. And I'm curious just to hear reflections on that, because that is sort of an intellectual, speculative sort of thinking, but I think it's a good way of preparing yourself for being merged. It's like two galaxies sort of crashing together, and we know that that happens occasionally in the universe, but no man as far, or woman as far as I know, have been part of that. So luckily, I think. New thing here has to do with power. If I position myself as a traditional or normal academic developer, I draw almost all my power from individual teachers. It's the fact that they value what I do and tell others about that I get a position and will be able to do things. In my life, that has gone so far, so I never ever look at the university website or my faculty website. I almost have no idea who is the rector of the university anymore, because there is a person there doing something. I never read policy anymore, because policy is a strange entity in my meaning building together with academic teachers, which I do a lot. So I draw my power from the teachers that are multifaceted. They are like all the species you can find in a rainforest. I mean, they are so different. They live here and here and there, and next day they live somewhere else. And I find that interesting. My own research is about the social embeddedness of academic teachers into microcultures and significant networks and those kind of entities that are impossible to see from afar, even though you feel them when you get into contact with them. So, you, then now pointing at you, clearly to me have drawn a lot of power from the fact that you work close to the rector's office, the provost office, because there are money coming in and they want things done. And I see your move here to sort of going a little bit outside of that. But there is a power play here. Who has really the power to decide what the curriculum should include? And who should have the power to do that? I see individual academic teachers who has the power of this in mind do nitty-gritty things that is not meaningful for almost anything. So that is clearly a problem. There are room for improvement. So maybe there are room for others to take power of the curriculum, but how far and in what balance and so on. I think that is another speculative sort of reflection here. To go further on that is, to me, of course, everything that is meaning-making in teaching and learning happens within very local context that are all different. And they might be different from day to day themselves. So learning to understand those is a long travel out in the undertow of this rainforest I talked about. And since they themselves, at least in my case in Sweden, consider themselves to be the sole owners of what's going to happen, they don't care much about policies. They care about their research colleagues throughout the world, or what they are doing research on. That is really important for them. And they keep track on that, and they might hear something happening in Hong Kong or something in Los Angeles, and they know it immediately. But if the rector is shifting something here and there, they might even not sort of notice that. So again, how far are you really prepared to go? Because it could be scary too. So that was my reflection on the research that we saw here. I will repeat. That has started. What is the next move? The bridging will affect all sides, because it always do. like the galaxies I talked about. What will happen to the power of what is meaning and not meaning? That was the third one. And then a personal question to all of you, I guess. How far are you prepared to go on this trip? Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I suggest that we have this discussion opened up. Every one of you relates to the questions. 3 of the 4 I already put in the Padlet so that you can read them through again. So, but also if one of you has something to say about the possible next step, the possible ways to influence the curriculum and to maybe shift that kind of power relations, and also what you might hopefully also get from this kind of mixture of international educators and the education development perspective. So please join in, yeah? So prepare to raise your hand. But I'm pretty sure that one of you already wants to answer, right? Just open the mic, I think, or we can use that second one and I'll run around here.
Okay, so I can start with the next move, and I think that Halmstad University really took a big leap, and we are now working on the robust system how we can support internationalization of the curriculum, and we start from the corner of quality assurance. So we are connected quality assurance with educational development, so in that way we can connect these two to really make the change happen. Because I think sometimes you can see in internationalization, and I could see it in my research, that even though the main definition of internationalization is that it should contribute to the quality of education and research, it's often disconnected from quality assurance at the universities. So for us, this is the next step to go. Should we go next step and then move to another question?
Is that okay? The next step, I was also thinking about, and in the Padlet I saw some comments already about, you talk about 2 worlds, Torgne, but I think our worlds meet in many ways already. And Lucy, you are an example of that. So Lucy is someone who's worked in, and still works in the international office, but very much with these internationalization of the curriculum questions. I am a lecturer, an educational developer who has internationalization as my area. And I think one thing I've learned from this conference, the educational development world is fairly new for me, but what I've learned from this conference is that there are so many different ways of solving the educational development role in different universities and different countries. And what an educational developer is responsible for looks quite different. We had a question just in the last session, are educational developers a service center or an independent research center which provides inspiring ideas? So we have many dichotomies within educational development, I think, and also within internationalization. So one way of organizing, one thing that we've seen in our research is that, and one thing I think we all took with us is that the teacher perspective is not very much reflected in the current research. What we've done is just a tip of the iceberg of teachers' challenges. And teachers' challenges, I mean, you talk about policy, Torgne, and how that affects. I agree that many teachers are looking at what people are publishing and so on. But at least in my institution, there are many teachers whose main focus is teaching. In fact, we've been divided up that way. You're a teacher, you're a researcher. That just happened. And if teaching is your main, people like Sylvie have to deal with those policy decisions. They have to have internationalization in their programs and in their courses. So we have our worlds meet already, I think. I think that's already been happening. I mean, there's many resources available for that. But it would be interesting I think the next step is to explore further how these worlds, the complexity of the worlds and the different roles that emerge. Are you just international office dealing with mobility of students coming in and out, or do you have a different role, and so on? So I think, yeah, roles are going to be very more complex, perhaps more interesting as well.
Yeah, and to
build on from what you just finished on, Becky. We started off by saying teachers are not a homogeneous group. Neither are internationalization practitioners. So I don't have power, I don't have money. And there are definitely, people that are engaged with internationalization strategies and are doing huge projects, but it doesn't represent the whole field of internationalization either. And Tony was talking about galaxies, and my mind is quite visual, so I instantly thought of rainbow unicorns and traveling from galaxy to galaxy. And we've looked at, well, there's actually a group that Lucy puts together of these unicorns that meet as a special group, educational developers that do play a role and want to learn more about who else is doing that. Where are the other unicorns? So I just wanted to make it that point. For me, the next step is, how deeply do we understand each other? I have been amazed by this conference. It's very welcoming. And I actually feel like it can be more my tribe, my community, than internationalization. I see so many linkages. And so fostering that curiosity, being curious about each other's roles and seeing the parallels. For me, IOC and educational development have a lot of parallels. Mainly, first of all, starting bottom up. Yeah? There might be strategy there, but it needs to happen in the classroom with the teachers. So very often that first bottom-up movement is essential. Yeah? And at some point, the top-down will have to connect, and I think we, both in our different roles, in our different expertise areas, struggle with that. So there's so much that we can learn from each other. So that is what I hope for.
Thank you so much. Oh God, I could love hearing to this panel the whole day. But nonetheless, you have the chance to share your experiences, share your thoughts, get your questions out. Let's connect on these, as we think, really important topics. Yeah, I mean, internationalization is crucial. Having that global perspective is crucial. So, what do you think about that? Otherwise, we can talk for hours. Yeah, you can just sit there and listen. That is fine with me. But yeah, there is a question.
Thank you I really appreciate your effort to try to bring those two concentric circles of educational development and internationalizing the curriculum together. I hope they can get closer, because the challenge is that in our different disciplines, people do not have the funding to go both to the International Education Conference and this one. So, but some colleagues have been doing amazing work in this area. So, for example, the Thompson Rivers University in Canada has a position that's essentially at the intersection of these two fields. Dr. Kyra Garson has held that role. I think she's now retiring, but she's somebody with an international education background who supports specifically internationalizing the curriculum. She's published a lot on the work that she has done to support students, published with colleagues on how she mentored faculty in redesigning courses for internationalization at home. Rethinking multicultural group work as intercultural learning is one of the articles she's published with a faculty member, Robin Reed. In Canada, we have facilitated workshops at the local ICED equivalent, the Developers Caucus, on how, for educational developers, on how they can design programs for intercultural learning at their home institutions. And I think one of the questions I wanted to add to your set of questions is that ethical question of what are the moments when a faculty member is excited about doing this work, but they do not have the competencies, they're too excited, and we might, as educational developers, have to say, please don't. Because in intercultural learning, there's harm that can happen. There's power, identity, risks, and intensity factors in the classroom. And have received calls from educational developers who said, I have this really enthusiastic faculty member who wants to do all this racism and identity-related work in our class, and they just don't have the language, the awareness of the systems, the complexity. So when can we say, yes, we'll support you, or how can we engage in a conversation about the limits of their knowledge as faculty members, the limits of our knowledge as educational developers, whether we are ready to do this work and can bring that complexity, and when is it better to say, I need to invite someone else who has the level of knowledge and complexity of decolonization power systems so that they can do it, give justice to the work without causing harm. Because there's two ethical principles in intercultural learning. care for the well-being of learners in my class, and care for anyone that they will interact with after leaving my class. And that responsibility is huge. But thank you so much for your work. Really amazing research, and I'm looking forward to reading more about it.
Thank you so much, and what a wonderful question. Who of you wants to? Yes, Becky, I saw that.
Thank you so much for bringing this up, and I will check out the names that you mentioned. Really interesting, and absolutely, we're dealing with a very, very sensitive topic. And going back to Sylvie and working with these intercultural groups, there's a lot of research showing that these can cement stereotypes. You know, if you don't work with those groups proactively in some way, and build those groups up, the risk is that you have your Swedish students saying, we're not going to work with Indian students again, for example. This is a disaster. So there's a lot of, there is research out there showing that there's a risk of cementing stereotypes. And I also hear your concern about needing to work with a lot of goodwill from, like, let's take Sylvie again, goodwill that we want to encourage openness and understanding in the classroom. I run a course at my institution in diversity and inclusion, and the teachers need to come up with ideas they're going to use in the classroom. And I had this example that the teacher wanted each student to stand up and say, give their background, their racial background, and discuss some of their thoughts around that publicly in front of groups, as a way, as this teacher saw it, of encouraging openness, of encouraging understanding. And of course, that kind of activity can backfire so badly, and we can see some of the problems with that. So I think there is a sort of big caution sign that we need to flag, and this is also where educational developers' roles, I think, become so important in becoming that kind of, have you really thought about this? That why that Evika was talking about. Why do you want to do this? What happens? What are the consequences of doing that? Let's talk this through a little bit further. So I think that's really, thank you.
I also think that sometimes when things go really wrong, we can, if there is a power of self-reflection, this can be used as a critical accident and as a learning experience in the end.
Yeah, and maybe to kind of flip the conversation a little bit, I fully agree. Teachers, we can't assume that they have the intercultural sensitivity and competencies to navigate this very rich but also, difficult space. And definitely we need to be mindful of the unintended consequences that we might see. But one of the things that we're trying to do at my institution is we have an ambition on promoting collaborative online international learning projects. And my colleagues who are involved with that always say that the first coil is between the lecturers, because that might be the first time that they really need to work together at content level, but also finding out what are the values in the teaching that are implicit, that's hidden as well. And if that is guided well, I mean, we're lucky that we have someone who coordinates and coaches and also trains lecturers in that. Having that kind of experience themselves might already sensitize them more towards, but if I'm already struggling and if, our relationship is a little bit difficult and bumpy, what does it then mean for students if I want to do the coil? And obviously I fully agree with what my colleague said as well, why do you want to do this? Because very often, especially coming from an applied sciences institution, it's very tempting to think of, oh, this is a fun activity. I think this is fun for students, without considering what is the goal? Why do you want to leverage the diversity in your classroom? And are you clear about this to your students as well? And maybe also say, there might be mistakes, there might be difficult moments, but that is also constitutes learning. Just a few thoughts.
Yeah, and that's the next question.
Thank you all for your lovely presentations. I have a question also in relation to the previous question. I always have the impression that internationalization is very Western-oriented, Eurocentric. To what extent do you also use all sorts of D&I frameworks? And maybe, Eveke, you are talking to educational developers now for your research. To what extent do they use frameworks of that you use of internationalization, but also the D&I frameworks? Because I think these are very important. And to what extent am I right that it's Eurocentric or Western oriented? How can we change that?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Really appreciate that, because that is one of the many struggles of the internationalization field indeed. So increasingly there are more critical voices emerging in the internationalization discourse. So decolonization, indigenization of curricula. In some areas, in some projects, there's speak of Africanization of internationalization, of Africanization of education. So yes, I think the field is increasingly being held more accountable, that it is very Western-centric and might continue a state of coloniality in higher education as well. So we have a responsibility in that. So there's discourse around more critical framings away from a neoliberal approach to internationalization that is only for employability and only for international student recruitment. In my interviews, none of the, well, I must say, maybe 2 or 3 of the people I spoke to were familiar with the concept or a model that I use for internationalization of the curriculum, which builds on different contextual layers. The terms diversity and inclusion came up very frequently, and decolonization as well. So that seems to me to speak more directly to the reality that my interviewees were working on. And that's also making, complicating the fuzziness of the area. So what exactly is the overlap between diversity, inclusion, and equity, and where does it become kind of more internationalization focused? Yeah, that is a space that, for example, in the research center where I work in, we are really trying to explore more. So how does one build on the other? Yeah, can inclusion maybe be a kind of a default setting? This is what we have to achieve for everyone, and then going further for an international global learning experience is maybe more external focus, like, so we send students out in this world and how do they contribute in an ethically sound and empowering way? But I think it's a very good question, thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Whilst I look for other questions, I might just add to that, there's in the area of decolonizing the curriculum, there's actually, there are more layers of curriculum. I already mentioned that before right now, and they are talking there about the null curriculum, what people aren't even able to think about as possible strategies to change their curricular activities. And there's a really nice paper that is, I think it's already 10 years old or something, from Granger, the first name I don't have, but it's a South African scholar who's really focusing on that, and that might be also something, right? So, okay, we have Granger, I think it's from 2000, and don't let me, I can give it to you in a second, yeah, if you wait for a few minutes, I can give it to you. We have 6 more minutes, and there's one more question I think we can definitely take. I haven't seen another person. You're on.
Okay, so hi, Antonia from Denmark. Thank you for your wonderful symposium and the good questions. I would be interested in hearing your take about the role of policy in all this. Tony just said you don't look at policy anymore, but I would maybe think that policy can shape agency and push things in certain directions. And just to elaborate, I was sitting here and had a little epiphany, because besides of doing academic development, I'm also a lecturer. And I started in the session, I thought, I've never done internationalization, never ever. this doesn't play a role in my teaching. And then when Tony said about worlds colliding, I thought, yeah, but we have tackled problems with international students. But we have never ever, in 15 years of teaching, thought about this, or I, embarrassingly, have never thought about this as an educational development problem. I've thought about it as an organizational problem. We have to handle the problem that there are language barriers, or we have to handle the problem that some students are not familiar with our dominant mode of teaching or something. So, and I was thinking, if my institution had had some policy pointing out that this is actually an educational development issue, my own thinking had been directed in certain ways, and yeah, so just interested to hear your takes on that.
So I look into this factor of policy or strategy, if we put it that way, if it makes difference for for the provision of continuing professional development, for instance, and there was no correlation. The thing that made difference was budget. So if there was money, then there was also professional development and engagement from academic side. But I also hope and I wish to believe that it makes difference. And just a comment on what you mentioned, that you didn't recognize internationalization from the beginning. I think that what you can also see in the IOC literature coming now, and also from my research, I see it's really everyone is doing internationalization because it overlaps with best teaching practices in the end, and overlaps to inclusion, diversity, and equity.
May I comment on the policy thing? So Katarina Mortensen and I and other colleagues did follow the policy that went into the Faculty of Humanities and Religious Studies at Lund. And we were doing that longitudinally, and we discussed with teachers about this policy. And we found that it does indeed matter, but in very indirect ways. It's almost like you said, you know, they read the policy, they talk about the policy, they are frustrated, they extract meaning from it, but there is almost never that I read this policy and therefore I do. So it goes into their thinking, enriches their conception of what is right and wrong and so on, and becomes part of the frame they use when they make meaning of things, and then suddenly we can see, and they discover themselves, like you and I now have done, that, oh my God, you know, that was the policy. We also saw that they never deal with individual policies. They always lump them together into big programs, like policy programs. Like this was about how to formulate assessment criteria for students and using them in the courses. That was the policy about. They connected that to Bologna and to the top-down steering of curriculum and ways academics sort of did things. And they talked a lot about that. That's what they love to talk about. They didn't like to talk about, but what does that mean in the course? So it's sort of, it seems to enrich their intellectual sort of toiling of things. So thereby, it does have an influence. So when I say I don't read policies anymore, it's also because I'm about to retire. They do have a point, but they almost, we found in this project anyway, they do not directly influence practice much. We actually saw, because of social factors locally, that in some cases the policy made things worse. And if I find that most interesting myself, so I have to tell you about that. So if you have a microculture, in this case, no, I wouldn't say which discipline it was, but you have a microculture and they are not interested in criteria or anything whatsoever. There is no discourse, no one ever say anything. But there were two individual teachers in that who developed that on their own, which is quite common in academia. So they did that on their own, and the others were just letting them doing that, and they didn't listen much to them and so on. So then comes the policy, and a major part of this microculture started to talk about criteria, and they constructed a more, sorry for the wording, a more naive understanding of what this was than those two had moved away. But since they belonged to this microculture and they started to talk about it, they started to gravitate back towards this more naive. So you see how this social interplay within the microculture also contributes to the outcome of an individual policy. So policies do matter, but in ways that I think we do not know very much about yet, at least me.
So another next step there to take, right? Okay, I think when it comes to the next step for our symposium, we are done. Thank you so much for being here, for engaging with us in discussions. That was really lovely. And thanks to all of you. Okay, have a nice further conference.